Okay, we are live here with amazing group of panelists. Welcome everyone. I am Basma Alawi, a Florida refugee organizer for We Are All America, Florida Field Director for Yalla Count Me In, and the Executive Director for Beeftails. This week, we actually celebrated the Arab American Census Week of Action. Today, we have one of our last events for this week. I just want to make sure in the beginning to share with you the Yalla Count Me hotline number, which is 833-333-6864. And I want also to give a special thanks to the organization who supported this week of action in Florida, which is Arab American Institute, Yalla Count Me In, We Are All America, Beeftails, Arab American Community Center in Jacksonville, and there are many other small groups also helped made this week a really great week of action. I'm also trying to also introduce two amazing panelists with us today, starting with Rana Abdul Jawad, a Palestinian American humanitarian TEDx speaker and vice president with the technology sector and executive director of the Arab American Community for Jacksonville. She serves on multiple boards in the community, including the Islamic School Al Furqan, served as a co-chair of Bank of America Lead for Women, and she currently serves as executive director of the Arab American Community Center in Jacksonville, Florida chapter, a nonprofit organization that empower Arab Americans by addressing their economic and social and culture needs. And she will be speaking more about this organization. And we also have another special guest, Sion. She is the co-founder and the CEO for and to know more about her, she's originally from Seoul, South Korea. Sion is currently the co-founder and CEO for Beeftails and a member of the Adjust facility at Temple University. Her research areas span from forced migration, geography, globalization, justice, and urban planning, and international development. As a doctorate student at the University of Florida, she led a research project that documented the oral histories of refugees who were resettled in Jacksonville, Florida. Having worked in public and private sectors prior to joining academia, her goal is to effectively bridge the voices of communities and scholars through research, storytelling, and community activism. She has a BA degree in political science from UNC University, a Master of Public Policy from Seoul National University, a Master of International Development from University of Pittsburgh, and now is working towards her PhD in Urban and Regional Planning at UF. I cannot speak more about these two amazing women, not just community leaders, but also a friend of mine. Starting actually, I just want to let people know that for generation to come, the census will benefit our family and community. It determines how Congress divides up over 800 billion in funding and how much and where each seat in the U.S. House of Representatives will be. We deserve to be included in the conversation and equation. Join us in centering and celebrating our community by saying, Yalla, count me in. So starting, thank you so much for both of you for joining and for your community leadership. Starting this event, I wanted to ask you if you have done the census yourself yet, and what was your experience with that? How long it took you to do it, and how have you done it online or by mail? So starting with Rana, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I was glad that we had the option to do it online. It's definitely for me, it was a better option. It took about 8 to 10 minutes. Obviously, it's going to take probably a little bit different. Depends if you have kids, you're adding the kids' information. It's really, really important that our kids are accounted for. Your entire household is accounted for. So adding my kids and my husband, and so it was total 5 of us. And that's why it took 8 to 10 minutes, but it could probably take even less than that. So it really depends.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I can speak to that smaller household having taking much less time to get on the internet and to get the census done. For me, I remember doing it, going online onto the website after receiving a postcard from the census office. My husband and I, we just went right after getting the postcard in the mail, and it took like 3 minutes. I would say 3 to 4 minutes. It was a little surprising because it was my first time ever completing the census. I came here in 2012, so I'd never done the census before. It was our first time, and I actually thought that it would take a lot more time, but it was a very quick process. Nothing complicated. The internet connection was really good. The website was easy to use, so I encourage a lot of you, many of you, to go and do it yourself too.
I agree. And just to share with both of you, this is my first time to Sion, even though I came in 2010 to the US, but I don't remember if I have done it. I don't remember that I was educated about it. This year, it was our first time doing it. We did it online as well. We are a family of four and took really 3 minutes. We done it online as well, and it was a really short process. I remember yesterday in one of our events, someone asked like if I changed many addresses and if I didn't receive anything in the mail, what I should do. And we just want people to know that you don't need to wait for the mail. If you didn't receive the mail yet, you can make it over the phone or in through online. And you can also call the hotline number for Yalla Count Me. They will be able to answer you in Arabic and in English. Going back with Sion, what is the difference between a refugee and an immigrant for people who don't know? And also, I always get that question and not have a clear answer to it. How many refugees are in the state or in the country? How should we answer this kind of a question? And where do we get these kind of answers from? Giving back all your background in this field.
hmm Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on this great event. I'm very happy to be here and to be answering some of these very important questions. I think your first question was what the difference is between between refugees and immigrants, and I mean, it's certainly a very complicated yet and very simple if you think about it. Refugees are the people that are seeking refuge, and legally, refugees include the people that have been granted a legal refugee status. So what that means is that on paper you have been acknowledged as refugees. Period. Those are refugees. Now there are also this population called asylum seekers who are a little different. They are, in a way, they're on their way to become refugees. These are the people that have either filed their application to be refugees or are waiting to be acknowledged as legal refugees. These are actually some of the questions that I get a lot, and even in my own class, a lot of students don't know the difference, so they ask me a lot. Undocumented, there's another word that I would like to point out, which is undocumented immigrants. These are the people that don't have any papers, but it just some in a lot of ways, they're mostly asylum seekers who haven't been granted the refugee status, or the people that haven't been able to find the legal pathway to become legal residents of this country and are somehow living under the shadows. These are undocumented immigrants. And we actually see, even the work that Basma and I do together, we see in a lot of cases, a lot of undocumented immigrants being right on the territory of being a refugee too. And of course, there are immigrants, in the context of America, immigrants usually refer to permanent residents who are not visa holders, meaning when you hold a visa, it means that you're here on a temporary basis. Whereas if you have a green card, which is the card that you get when you become a permanent resident, you're here on a permanent basis, meaning that you're here indefinitely with the right papers at your hand.
Yes,
Yeah.
and actually, this is a great way to start because no matter you came to the US, if you are refugees, an immigrant, or undocumented, you all should and participate in being counted in the census. So this is really important for people to know that no matter what your status, what kind of papers you have, you all should be counted. And going back to the refugees numbers, like how many refugees are in the state? We always work with refugees stories and refugees cases, but this is a number that we always struggle to give. So how this being counted?
That is an excellent question. And that's actually the question that I've asked myself so many times being a researcher myself. But the reality is that there is no, in America, there's no a set of statistics that show the number of refugees. Refugees could actually come from, there's a lot of different types of refugees. You know, there are refugees who have come to America as through resettlement. These are the refugees that came from the country of displacement or country of refugee, and then were able to come to the United States as a third country for safety. These people are certainly one category of refugees, whereas there are other refugees who have been granted the refugee status after being an asylum seeker in America or at the border of America, right? So there are different types of refugees, but in reality, the truth is that there is no set of statistics that we can use to point out or to be able to enumerate the number of refugees in this country. So in a lot of cases, there are some sources that we use for that as a researcher that we tend to use in order to be able to calculate or be able to at least estimate the size of the refugees in this country. And one of that is actually Census. In a lot of cases, we go to the Census website, we download the data, we use a formula to be able to estimate how many refugees there are in a certain geography. So, which is one of the reasons why we should definitely have to, we encourage a lot of people to go and fill out the census.
I agree. And we will talk more about how we are using now the census for different projects that we are involving the refugees in it. Rana, going back to you, as an Arab American, why is it important for Arabs to be counted as an Arab under Arab category, and how the Arab community could benefit from being counted as Arabs?
Well, first is by knowing how important it is. Obviously, the census is the most inclusive civic activity in our country, and the data collected affects our nation's ability to ensure equal representations, equal access to important government and private sector resources for all American. So we'll start with that. I mean, census results are used to allocate seats and draw district lines for the U.S. House of Representatives, state legislators, local boards, to target more, like you said, than 800 billion annually in federal assistance. And we do live in this country. There's a lot of Arab Americans, and we all depends on accurate census. And since our community is part of this country, we need to make sure that they're accounted for correctly, and they are part of all these, services across the U.S., and they are represented accurately. So when it comes for any equal federal help or political representations or equal access to public and private resources, then there's correct data that includes our community to be part of all of these services.
Yes, and you as how would you like to share with us how you were being counted? Did you choose a specific Arab slash specific thing, or how
Yeah,
have you done that kind?
I have to admit that, for a lot that haven't used it before, I can see why it can be a little bit confusing, because the first thing you'll notice when you access the form that we have examples listed under white, such as Lebanese and Egyptians. And for any Arab American filling this census for the first time, they look at it and they automatically assume, okay, well, this is where the category that I fall in. So let me just go ahead and check it. Let me get this form done. Let me check this. This is where I belong. Wrong. Okay, do not check that box. Even the example listed there is just to me mind-boggling. I don't understand how we're listing Egyptians and Lebanese and other Middle Eastern country under white. But the way we needed to make sure of, and we will definitely go that into detail, some of the education tools that we're using, and we're letting our community know that once you fill there's one questions that you fill. It asks you if you're Latina, you check no. I wish, I love Latinos, right? But then you scroll down to a race, and it asks you if you're, where the box to check in. You definitely need to select other race, and you need to make sure that you identify yourself, however you identify your ethnicity. In my situation, obviously, I'm a Palestinian American, so I wrote Palestinian. But you can put Arab, that's fine. just don't put Middle Eastern. It's such a vague thing to write, honestly, and you just want to make sure that you either put the ethnicity that you belong to, Yemeni, Palestinian, Lebanese, Egyptian, or you can just write Arab, and that works too because that is part of the data for the Arab American community.
Yes, and actually, I did speak before with Sian, and I did explain to her that as an Arab, we don't have a box. So we sometimes it gets confusing to us. Yes, I was told when I came to the country that just you are listed under white, and sometimes I I don't think I am counted as white. So I just want to make sure that we have our own box, and that's the census could be the answer for us, and it's the answer for us. So we could be counted the right way. Going back to Sian, and thank you so much, Rana, for explaining that. This is really helpful. Sian, looking at your background in political science and all the research you have been part of or done about refugees and immigrants, how has the census have helped you with your research and your project? And if you could give some example about that.
Sure. We use, as I said, Census website is the website that we go and, start downloading, data in order to, and for any research, that's the area that's the website where we start. So me personally, since I work a lot with, geographical data, whatever we're making maps or building spatial data, we always go to the Census website and download the data in order for it to make it match into different areas, different neighborhoods within a city, for instance. So that is one example. And another example is because as a researcher studying the refugees and the migrant issues, as I said, we just don't have a lot to work with in terms of data. There's no set of statistics for refugee population in this country. So a lot of the times we set a formula that we can use where we can plug in the data from the census to be able to estimate the number of, or like for instance, there was this formula that I once used in order to come up with the numbers for the employment rates among refugee populations. So I mean, the census data is really the very basic, very foundational information that we always work with when we're especially working with numbers. So those are some examples that come to my mind. We also, I've personally used some data from the USCIS website, but some of the data that's up there are also some of them are based on the census information. There's also some like annual reports that come out of the Congress that are gathered and published, prepared by the Office of Refugee Resettlement within the federal government, which is also to some degree based on the census data. So, I think I'm coming back to saying that the census data is really like the very basic, the basic unit that we all start with when it comes to studying and doing research.
Yes, thank you. That's really helpful, and I know you already now working on a couple of projects that maybe we can speak about later that involve refugees and immigrants in Florida. Rana, going back to you as a community leader, what have some of the needs that the Arab and refugees community have been asking or always concerned about that the participation in the census could help address as well?
There's definitely three different categories that comes in mind. Lack of education on the importance of census and why it is so important. A lot of times, when I talk about it on social media, I get messages. Well, why is it so important to fill it correctly? Also, the language barrier. We have a really huge language barrier when it comes, even though we do have it and translated in different languages, but to even get to that resource or get to that point, you still need to use the main language, English. And we have a lot of immigrants here that English is their second language and sometimes their third language. So we just need to do better. And I think that falls on our shoulder as a community, to make sure that everybody in our community is very comfortable knowing where to go, how to learn about it, how to fill it. So that's the second part of it. And honestly, also the third one would be filling it correctly. Even if even if you're great at reading it, even if you understand it well, in the past we have a lot have filled it wrong. And I've spoken to a lot of Arab American that actually remember filling it a while ago, and they remember putting, checking the box white in the past. So that just shows us there's three different gap that we really have to work on. We have to educate the importance of census, why it's so important to our community, how are these funding allocated, how are these House of Representatives seats are selected, and also we need to make sure that we are prepared and ready to, for a lending hand for translation, for making sure that we can actually do the legwork, because it should have been done, to be honest with you, from the country itself when it's sent out from the Census Department. But since it's not, we need to make sure that we take that work on our shoulder and do that job.
Yes, I agree. And we're going to go again back to you, Rana, and to tell us how the AACC in Jacksonville have been helping sharing that word out and spreading the information about census. Sion, you have shared before we talked now about a game or some kind of thing you do with your students to involve them more around the census. Could you share that with us? And maybe you also have shared that you want to share some kind of history with the census as well. So if you would like to talk about that, and hopefully more professors and teachers use these kind of games to engage our community with it as well.
Well, thank you so much for asking that question, Basma. So when it comes to census, just being a researcher and an academic myself, there's so many things that we can talk about when it comes to census. There's definitely that part where we have to encourage people to be to fill out the census and to be so that we can push more of the representation aspect of it. But then there's also a lot of history and a lot of I think even today there's just some contention. Just a while ago we've had a lawsuit where the current administration wanted to push the citizenship question in the census, and that got into a lawsuit, a contentious lawsuit. So I think just being an immigrant myself, but also at the same time being an academic, I just want to make sure that people know that there's a cycle of representation surrounding census. There's census. There's one part where you have to fill it out, because unless you do it, your presence won't be acknowledged properly, right? And you want yourself to be represented. But it's also very important to understand that these questions on race and ethnicity that we now see in the census in America are very different from the kind of questions that you would see on race and ethnicity in other countries. And that's one of the things that I do in my class. I try to, I have my students compare the questions in the census from all over the country. And for instance, if you go to France and if you were to fill out the race and ethnicity question in France, in the French census, you won't be able to, because they don't have it. They haven't had this question since 1978, because it was deemed, there was a consensus overall in the nation that this question could be divisive, among certain groups. So they just stopped counting people based on their race and ethnicity. Which I think also leads to that, part where, you guys, since you guys consider themselves to be the Arab community, but then you didn't think that the idea of the Arab community itself wasn't properly represented in the census. So that kind of, leads us all the way back to the idea that race and ethnicity are very subjective. It's subjective based on how you see it. So there are certainly some historians that have studied census just the census questionnaires and the history surrounding it as a very main subject to understand how the politics in America have evolved over time. Because in a way, census questionnaires are very pure reflections of the political ideas and especially how the people in power, the white populations, saw the non-white populations, and how they have gradually changed their views on non-white populations over time. So for instance, I'm looking at the questionnaire that I have here with me. In 1870, in the census questions, there were only 5 categories in the race and ethnicity questions. And those were white, black, mulatto, Chinese, and Indian. We don't even use the word mulatto anymore. We shouldn't. But these were the 5 categories, and that's how the white people saw the non-white populations, at that time. But as we come, closer to our more recent time in 2010, there were many more categorizations of the census, and that's how the census questionnaires have evolved over time. There have been just a lot more categorizations over time. So that's something that we might be able to see in the future, in the census in the future. But without all of us going out and really filling out the census to be represented, that representation is not going to happen. And that's what I meant by the cycle of representation. Mhm.
Wow, really valid point, and I love that information. I didn't know that in France they don't do race questions anymore, or they never done it maybe. So now I think going back to Rena, tell me more about first what is AACC for people. There are people who, by the way, joining and asking me questions about the 2 organizations that you represent, both of you. So you will be speaking more about what kind of work you do on the ground. So Rana, tell us more about AACC and ASU now too, and how your organization, through the work you do, you are starting to engage in and talking about the census.
Sure. Arab American Community Center. We have different chapters. One is in Orlando, one in Jacksonville, and in Tampa. And the Jacksonville chapter actually started just shy of a few years, so we're kind of new. But within those 2 years, we have accomplished a lot. We wanted to make sure that the Arab community in Jacksonville is connected. Their voices are heard. We meet any of their needs through social, educational, or financial services. One of the things that we were able to accomplish is also create or establish the first Arab American festival here in Jacksonville, that we were very proud of, because we wanted to really bridge the culture between the Arab community in Jacksonville and everyone else. So that was something that's very successful. Unfortunately, we had to this year put a hold on it, but last year was a very successful festival. We do also have created other opportunities through the businesses and making sure that we encourage people to work within the community. Some of the things that just recently our chapter is very, very proud of, that they established the youth chapter, which is ASU, it's UNF, and they were successfully able to push for the language, Arabic language, as part of the language that is taught at UNF now. And that's something that we're very proud of. So if you notice, that Arab American Community Center is really all about our culture and our language and our tradition, and bridging that with everyone else in our community. One of the things that we do is also we make sure that the community itself over here is connected to our roots. A lot of the youth that was born in Florida or in the U.S., some might have visited Palestine or Lebanon or Syria or Iraq, and some they probably never been there. So we created different programs to really connect them to their roots through food and cooking, teaching cooking a certain, dishes from their country, to even have a summer camps. We did something last year. And again, due to social distance, we really had to put a lot hold of projects that we have planned for them this year. But last year, we also did folklore dance training, which is called Debka, that we wanted our youth here to really connect to their culture through it. So that's just some of the things that we have. And again, ASU is our youth chapter of AACC, which is a representation at UNF campus. A lot of the things that we are doing, and they have been, ASU especially, been very active on educating our community through different methods, while social distancing, by Zoom meetings, social media, conference calls. And we just recently created flyers, and that flyers are distributed to the Arab American businesses here in Jacksonville with the AACC page, directing them for any questions to just shoot us a message. We have a page on Facebook. It's called AACC of Florida /Jacks or Space Jacks. and or Jacksonville, and they can actually message us, and we will return a call, or we will give them a call to talk to them, either in Arabic or language, whatever language they prefer, talk to them about the census. We also just purchased the Arab community address list or mailing list from the city of Jacksonville. So we can connect with them via mail and send them different flyers in Arabic and in English to talk about census. A lot of the things that right now we're doing is mainly through social media, Zooms, and now it's going to be via mail as well.
So impressing. And talking about the festival, I cannot wait for the virus to end so we can really get back to all these amazing activities. It has been a pleasure being part of the AACC in Jacksonville. I have been learning a lot about our community in Jax. I know Rana also worked a lot with different refugee cases, domestic violence cases. We have a lot of new Arabs who just came in the last 10 years from Syria and Iraq, many refugees, and who really need to be educated about their new home. Sian, tell us also, and I just want to make sure, shout out to ASU. They have been putting many hours in work this week through the Zoom information meetings with many youth, and also through dropping some posters to different grocery stores, making sure that our community definitely being counted the right way. We will go back to some questions, but Sian, would you tell us more about your work and the organization you have co-founded?
Yeah, sure. Aside from being an academic and teaching at college, I recently co-founded a nonprofit out of Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, with Basma here, and we're called Beeftails, and we do storytelling. Our method, our tool is storytelling in order to make changes to the way that people perceive newcomers, refugees and immigrants in particular, and the way that they are treated, not just within the United States, but really worldwide, because there's just a lot of misconceptions surrounding refugees and immigrants, which is a common theme. If you look at any country in the world right now, you would see that they are treated very differently from the way that their native population are treated. So we are looking to break that. We are looking to bridge the gap between the communications and these perceptions between the longtime residents and the newcomers, just so that we can make a more inclusive and more welcoming space for everybody, where any newcomers, regardless of what reason they were forced to flee their home, would still be welcomed and included. So as a part of that, we use storytelling. What we basically do is we collect the stories, the amazing stories of resilience and migration from refugees and immigrants all around the world, and we share them, we spread them in a lot of different formats. And with the coronavirus outbreak, we had to move a lot of our programs online. So that's one of the areas that we're investing in right now. We're looking to expand on the types of programs that we develop online. And actually, we are just about to launch a public speakers program, and that is one of the programs that we have been investing in. And the program is to train more refugees and immigrants, or any non-native English speakers, to complete our program and become a better public speaker, so that they can go out and deliver their message, to speak out about their experience of migration and displacement much more effectively. And we're building an online program so that people have to travel anywhere in this time of duress. And we're about to launch the online application, the launch of the first pilot program, where we're looking to recruit a group of the very first trainees of the program, who will be given a scholarship package that will include a tuition waiver and a very small seed grant that they could use in order to develop and carry out their own storytelling project. So that's one of the areas that we're working on. We also have an online resource guide that we're developing for the refugees and immigrant population in Northeast Florida, so that they can better navigate the resources available in the region. We are also currently working on this statewide project in Florida called Learn, Share, and Change. And through that, we're basically proposing a model of action, model of change based on 3 different steps in order to make Florida a more inclusive and immigrant-friendly space in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yes, I am so excited for that project, and many organizations have been involved in it. Actually, we have a question from Haley Ross. Do you feel, and this is maybe a question for Rana, do you feel forced into a box when it comes to these types of assessments? What difficulties are faced when you are forced? Sorry, I'm trying to read the question, but it's kept moving. When you are forced to fit into a category you do not feel represented in, the lack of MENA category and having to define your race. Brenna, if you would like to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's disappointing. It's not you're just forced, but you're also in a way misled to select a box that you don't fit in. So you're going to have a group of Arab American that feel misled after they check in the box and they mail in their census and they find out, oh, by the way, you could have checked other race and put Arab. And then you're going to have the other part of the community who feel disrespected and feel that they're not in part of the community for it to not even for us to be not even accounted for as a race or as a box to check in when we have a big percentage of population of Arab American in the country, not just in Florida. So I'm not just speaking about the feelings that I have here in my city and state, but I'm sure it's completely the same everywhere else. So it's definitely, to see MENA unrepresented. It's something that we need to move away from, and that's why we're pushing for filling the census correctly, and that's why we're pushing for educating everyone about the importance of census and what they need to write on it, just so we don't have this problem when come next time, which I know it's going to take a long time, but we still need to do the work from now.
Yes, I agree. And I just want to also go back and remind people that if people are joining and they are Arab speakers, please feel free to reach out to the Allah Count Me In hotline, which our representative definitely going to answer you both in Arabic or English. And the number is 833-333-6864. And if you have any question about the census, please feel free to ask and call that number. Also, you don't need to go anywhere. If you can fill out the census via mail, online, or over the phone as well. And there are some people praising you guys and ladies and making sure that they want your contact information. So how people could reach out to you?
Absolutely. There's different ways you can reach out to me. You can either reach out to me through the AACC of Florida Jacksonville page on Facebook. When you message me, I actually get these messages along with a few other board members that are in charge of that page. We're more than happy to either email you back, message you back, or even call you. We will also you can just reach out to me directly through Facebook. I have a page. It's under my full name, Rana Abdul Jawad. I'm more than happy to connect. In the past, I used to say, let's chat and meet for coffee. I know that's not something we can do now, but we can definitely grab our coffee and just Zoom or FaceTime or call and just talk about anything, especially if you're settling into Jacksonville and you're new to the community. That's something the AACC really trying to connect with our community. One of the things that we do, and I'm so glad we have this opportunity to talk to everyone today, because one of the things that I want to make sure that is really important as census is domestic violence. And like Basma mentioned, the AACC, we do help explaining the services of domestic violence women who have a problem understanding their rights here. They moved to America just recently. They don't know the services that is offered to them, or maybe the language barrier. Please reach out to the AACC page of Jacksonville so we can help you, we can direct you. We don't advise, we just hold your hand through the process, and we hope that you make the right decision. So yes, please reach out to me anytime.
Thank you. And Sion?
Yeah, sorry. Sure. You guys are welcome to reach out to Weavetails too. We're trying to build onto our online presence right now, but we are very active on our social media. We have a page on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's WEAVETALES, Weavetails, and we also have a website, weavetails.org. And if you go onto our website, you'll be able to find the email address for me and for our executive director, Basma. And you are welcome to just contact us that way. Or there's always also a contact page on our website where you can just fill out the form and send us a message, whatever you want to talk to us about. We'll probably not be able to provide you with the kind of assistance that Rana, through her organizations, is able to help you with, but we're here to be your ears. We're here to listen to your story and to have it out in any way possible. So feel free to reach out to us.
Yes, and please feel free also to reach out to the AAI, the Arab American Institute. If you have any question about the census, you can reach out to Yalla Count Me. I shared earlier the hotline number. And also, of course, we have a Yalla Vote campaign as well. If you have any question about voting as well, you can reach out. I am Florida refugee organizer here in Florida and Florida field organizer with Yalla Count Me In. Please, if you have any question about any kind of work around refugees, or if you want to become a refugee advocate, I would love to have you join. We have a question from Abu Ibrahim. He say he's in San Diego County, and they haven't seen any outreach regarding the census, even for the Arabic Council of San Diego. So, Abu Ibrahim, we are glad that you are joining. Now you know. Please stay in contact with Yalla Count Me In. We can actually deliver any kind of posters or any kind of materials, t-shirts. I know Rana have the t-shirts on today. We can deliver any kind of outreach materials to you. Just reach out, and I'm sure, and both in Arabic and in English. So please reach out, and we are here to support. We have also Nagam. She said, "Can you please share your guest contact with us?" We already did. Please reach out to them if you have any specific question about their specific the topics that they discuss. And please reach out to me and to them if there's any need. I'm trying to really go over the questions really fast. Thank you so much for people who is joining and for saying hi to us. Lawrence, thank you so much. I know this is a great information. I learned a lot from both of our panelists. I really appreciate you all tuning in. Please make sure now you know there is no excuse. Now you know first you do your census and then try to do the outreach for the community. Yalla Count Me In or Yalla ضمني التعداد. Make sure that you do your census and being counted. Anything else you want both of you ladies to add before we wrap up? I cannot hear you, Rana. No. Your voice just, no, we cannot hear you. Sian, do you want to go first and we go back to Rana? Hopefully she'll be.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would like to thank you, thank Basma and this organization for having me on this very important event today. I had a lot of fun, talking about. I haven't been back to the classroom in a while, and it was a lot of fun, talking about census again. I just want to remind everyone of the importance, of course, of being counted right now through the census. But like being an academic myself, I just want to emphasize the importance of being a part of history by being having yourself counted through the census, because the census has gone through a lot of changes which would not have been possible without the participation of people filling out the census and activism and everything. So I just want to remind everyone that it is your chance to be a part of the historical wave, the historical change. And I think that's all I have to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Rana, hopefully we will be able to hear you this time. No, we can't. It's okay. Here, let's wave. Thank you so much for both of you for joining. I really appreciate you. And hopefully everyone should be counted Yalla Count Me In. And if you have any question, please reach out to the Yalla Count Me In, both in Arabic or English. We still can't hear you. It's
Oh.
okay. It's okay. Thank you so much and have a good night.
Be safe.
Have a good weekend. Bye.